It took me 2 minutes to snap the final plank of flooring into place, but only 10 seconds under the sink cabinet to realize my marriage was over. 6 days later, I stand here raising a wine glass while my other hand clutches a small remote inside my pocket. My husband thinks we are celebrating his dream home, but with one press of a button, I am going to detonate his entire life right in front of everyone. My name is Claire Donovan. I stood at the head of the banquet table in our renovated kitchen, the heart of our home in Harbor Ridge, Colorado. In my right hand, I held a crystal glass filled with a Pinot Noir that cost $40 a bottle. In my left hand, hidden deep within the pocket of my silk dress, I clutched a small black remote control. My thumb traced the ridges of the plastic. It was a simple device, usually meant for changing slides during a presentation. But tonight it was the trigger for a nuclear explosion. Logan Hayes stood beside me, my husband, the rising star at Silverline Strategies. His arm was wrapped around my waist, his fingers digging into my hip with a pressure that looked affectionate to an audience but felt like a warning to me. He was playing the role of the perfect husband, the benevolent provider who had just closed the deal of the decade. We had invited everyone here under the guise of a double celebration. On the surface, we were toasting to the completion of the new kitchen flooring I had installed myself and the massive financial consulting project Logan had secured. In reality, this was an execution. I scanned the room. The air was thick with the murmur of polite conversation and the clinking of silverware. There were our neighbors, the ones who borrowed sugar and gossiped about property values. There were Logan's colleagues, men in sharp suits who laughed too loudly at his jokes. There was my mother-in-law, Nora Hayes, sitting near the center of the table with her critical gaze sweeping over the appetizers, likely searching for a flaw in my hosting, and scattered among them were a few of my own friends, oblivious to the fact that they were witnessing a funeral for a marriage they thought was idyllic. They all saw the American dream. I saw a crime scene. Logan tapped his spoon against his glass. The room quieted down. He flashed that charismatic smile, the one that charmed investors and had once charmed me. "Everyone, if I could have your attention for a moment," Logan announced, his voice smooth and rich. He turned to look at me, his eyes crinkling with practiced adoration. "I want to propose a toast to my incredible wife, Claire. Not only does she put up with my long hours at the firm, but look at this floor. She did this all by herself. A woman of many talents. To Claire, and to our bright future in this beautiful house." He squeezed my waist again, a silent cue for me to beam at his praise. To Claire and Logan, the room chorused. I forced the corners of my mouth upward. The smell hit me then. It was a nauseating cocktail of his expensive sandalwood cologne, the metallic tang of the wine, and the faint chemical scent of the adhesive from the luxury vinyl planks beneath our feet. It was the smell of betrayal. Logan leaned in to kiss my temple, whispering so only I could hear, "Smile, babe. You look stiff." I kept my expression frozen in a mask of delight. "Enjoy it while it lasts, Logan," I thought. He had no idea that a USB drive was currently taped behind the family portrait in the hallway. He did not know that a series of emails were sitting in a server queue, scheduled to deploy in exactly 20 minutes. He certainly did not know that I had signed an emergency order with a divorce attorney named Mariah Holt just hours ago. Everything was in position. A tremor started at the base of my neck and shot down to my heels. It was not fear. It was the cold shock of memory. Standing there, surrounded by the warmth of the party, I felt the phantom sensation of cold linoleum against my back. I was transported back to the darkness under the cabinet. I gently pulled away from Logan's grip and reached for the microphone on the stand nearby. The feedback whined slightly before settling. "Thank you, Logan," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the havoc I was about to unleash. "And thank you all for coming. We are celebrating the future tonight. Yes, But before we do that, I think it is important to acknowledge the work that got us here. I looked at Nora, then at Logan's boss, and finally rested my gaze on my husband. To truly appreciate this new floor, I continued, my thumb hovering over the button in my pocket. I need to take you back to where I was 6 days ago. It was a simple Monday afternoon. I was not the hostess you see now. I was just a woman covered in sawdust, lying underneath the sink cabinet, holding a hand saw. The room waited, expecting a heartwarming anecdote about DIY renovations. I want you to imagine that silence, I said softly. And then I want you to hear what broke it. The space beneath a standard kitchen sink is a tomb of plumbing traps and darkness, barely 30 inches wide. I had taken a personal day from my project management job at Horizon Learning Labs to finally tackle the renovation myself, tired of tripping over the peeling linoleum that curled at the corners like dead skin. I was wedged backward, my spine pressed against the rough plywood bottom of the cabinet, while my legs extended out into the kitchen, completely obscured by the granite island and a fortress of stacked luxury vinyl plank boxes. The air down there was stagnant, thick with the smell of damp particle board, old drain water, and the sharp chemical tang of the flooring adhesive I had just applied. The rhythmic shh of my hand, saw cutting through a piece of trim, was the only sound in the house. It was a meditative noise, one that helped me ignore the resentment simmering in my gut. Logan had promised to install these floors 3 years ago when we bought the place. In 3 years, the only thing he had successfully built was the custom wine rack that held his precious bourbon collection, leaving me to handle the grit and the grime. I wiped a bead of sweat from my forehead with the back of my wrist, exhaling a breath full of sawdust. Then, the front door opened. I froze, the saw blade hovering millimeters above the wood. I glanced at my watch, which was glowing in the shadows. It was 2 in the afternoon. Logan never came home before 6. A playful smile touched my lips as I thought about wiggling out and shouting a greeting to surprise him. He must have come home for a forgotten file or perhaps a romantic lunch. Clack, clack, clack. My smile vanished. That was not the heavy, rubber-soled thud of Logan's sneakers, nor the solid step of his dress shoes. It was the sharp, staccato strike of a high heel on hardwood, a very thin, very expensive heel. The rhythm was fast, light, and decidedly female. I held my breath, my chest tight against the drain pipe above me. Are you sure? A woman's voice drifted into the kitchen. It was smoky, young, and laced with a nervous giggle. Won't she? You know. Come back. My blood ran cold. I knew that voice. It was Mia Clark, the new project assistant at Silverline Strategies. The 24-year-old Logan had described as tenacious and hard-working over dinner just last week. Relax, Mia, Logan's voice followed, booming with a confidence that made my stomach churn. Claire is buried in meetings at Horizon. She is a creature of absolute habit. She never leaves work early. We have the place to ourselves. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle a gasp. Through the 1/4-inch gap between the cabinet doors, I saw them enter my field of vision. First, Logan's polished Italian loafers, the ones I bought him for his birthday. Then, a pair of black, strappy stilettos that wrapped around ankles much slenderer than mine. They stopped right in front of the sink, inches from my face, separated only by a thin piece of wood. I hate this kitchen, Logan said, his voice dripping with disdain. I heard the distinct sound of him slapping his hand on the countertop I had spent all weekend sanding. It smells like a construction site. God, I cannot wait to get out of this temporary shack and move down to the city where we can live like actual human beings. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I was terrified they would hear it. The dream home we had saved for years to buy was just a temporary shack to him. Well, Mia purred, the sound of fabric rustling suggesting she was leaning into him. That depends on your timeline, doesn't it? Have you given her the papers yet? You said you would do it this week. There was a pause. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for a denial, praying this was just a fling. Logan chuckled. A low, cruel sound I had never heard before. Babe, you have to be patient. It is all about the timing. The check from the Mitchell Farm estate Claire's inheritance clears into the Fairview joint account on Monday. If I file for divorce today, I get nothing. But if I wait until the funds hit our shared account, he trailed off, the implication hanging heavily in the dusty air under the sink. Then it becomes marital property. Mia finished for him, sounding impressed. Exactly, Logan replied, his tone smooth and predatory. I wait for the deposit. Then I file. I take 50% of everything, including the farm money. That is the capital we need for the penthouse in River Point. Once that cash is secure, I will cut her loose and kick her out. She won't know what hit her. I lay paralyzed in the cramped darkness, forced to listen as my husband dissected my character with the same casual indifference one might use to describe a used car. Claire is, well, she is stable, Logan said, his voice drifting closer to the refrigerator. She is sweet, but let's be honest. She is not exactly sharp when it comes to the big picture. She would never dream that I have an exit strategy. She thinks we are a team. A team, Mia giggled. That is cute. I heard the suction of the fridge door opening, followed by the hiss of a bottle cap being pried off. They were drinking the local craft IPA I had driven 20 miles to buy just last week because Logan mentioned he liked the hops profile. Now he was using it to toast to my destruction. It is not just about the freedom, babe, Logan continued. Taking a long swig, it is the upgrade. Once we sell this place in Harbor Ridge, we take the equity plus her cash and put a down payment on that penthouse in River Point. Imagine the view. Every stroke of the hammer I had swung that morning suddenly felt less like home improvement and more like I had been nailing the lid of my own coffin shut. But are you sure the money is coming? Mia asked. 100%, Logan replied. $450,000. The final disbursement from the Mitchell farm sale. It hits the Fairview joint account on Monday. Because we are married, and because she trusts me implicitly, she set it up as a direct deposit to our shared savings. The second it clears, I move it. I clean up my bad debt. We secure the new place. And I dump about 50 grand into that crypto play I told you about. By the time she realizes the balance is zero, we will be legally separated. The air in my lungs turned to ice. $450,000. My parents' blood, sweat, and soil. I closed my eyes and saw my father, James Donovan, lying in his hospice bed, his skin gray and paper thin. I remembered how he had gripped Logan's hand with the last of his strength. Claire lives too much in her head, my father had whispered. She needs a rock. Promise me you will be her rock, son. And Logan, with tears swimming in his eyes that I now realized were nothing but a performance, had squeezed back. I will protect her with my life. James, I promise. It was all a lie. Just like the startups that never launched. Just like the credit card bills I paid off quietly so he would not feel emasculated. Just like the lie that we were partners. Above me, the floorboards creaked. They were moving out of the kitchen. I heard their footsteps ascend the stairs, heading toward the master bedroom, the room where I had painted the walls a soft blue. The room where I had cried myself to sleep after 2 failed rounds of IVF, while Logan had simply patted my back and gone to sleep. The rhythmic thumping began almost immediately. My hand tightened around the heavy steel wrench I had been using to tighten the sink trap. A red-hot urge flooded my brain. I could crawl out. I could run up those stairs. I could swing this wrench into the back of his skull and end it. I imagined the impact. I imagined the silence. But then, the logic kicked in. If I killed him, I would go to prison. He would be the victim. His mother, Nora, would weep on television. and my parents' legacy that $450,000 would be eaten up by legal fees or frozen by the state. I would lose everything. I forced my hand to relax. I breathed in the dust and the dark. I counted the creaks. 1, 2, 3. Eventually, the house fell silent. Then came the footsteps back down the stairs, the murmur of satisfied goodbyes, the click of the front door, and the fading hum of Mia's car engine. Only then did I move. I dragged my body out from the cabinet, my limbs stiff and aching. I barely made it to my knees before I retched, vomiting bile into the half-plumbed sink. I wiped my mouth and slumped back against the dishwasher, catching my reflection in the stainless steel door of the oven. My face was flushed, streaked with dirt and sawdust. I looked wrecked, but as I stared at that wild-eyed woman, the trembling stopped. "Okay, Logan," I whispered to the empty, silent kitchen. "You think I am stupid? You think I am just a stepping stone? Well, let's see what a stupid person can do in 6 days." That night, I feigned a migraine. It was an easy performance. I went upstairs early, leaving Logan on the couch with a pepperoni pizza and the basketball game, the blue light of the TV flickering against the wall like a erratic strobe. I lay in the dark, but I did not sleep. My mind shifted gears. I stopped being the heartbroken wife and became what I was paid to be, a senior project manager. I broke the situation down into actionable items. Objective dismantle, Logan Hayes. Timeline 6 days until the party. Risk assessment critical. I waited until Logan came to bed. Within 10 minutes, his breathing deepened into the heavy, wet snore of a man without a conscience. I reached for his phone on the nightstand and pressed his thumb against the sensor, a permission I had added months ago under the guise of emergency access. The screen unlocked. I went straight to his messages. Nothing. The thread with Mia was gone. His email trash folder was empty. He was careful, but nobody is that careful. I slipped out of bed and crept down to the garage. The concrete was cold under my bare feet. I went straight to his golf bag, a massive leather thing he had brought back from a tournament in Scottsdale, claiming it was his lucky charm. He never let me move it. I unzipped the velvet-lined side pocket. My fingers brushed against receipts first. The Four Seasons, Tiffany & Co. Then hard plastic, a cheap prepaid burner phone. I powered it on. It had 20% battery left. The messages were all there. A thread between L and Mia C, dated back 3 months. "She is clinging to me like a barnacle," Logan had written last week. "It is pathetic. Just wait for the payday." "Baby," Mia had replied. I scrolled back further, past the crude jokes and the coordination of hotel rendezvous. I found an older thread with a contact named Rachel K. "Please, Logan," Rachel wrote. "I need that money back. My mom's insurance payout was not for you to gamble with." Logan's reply was short. "Stop harassing me or I will file a restraining order." The $25,000 was an investment, and investments have risks. My hands shook, but I forced them steady. I took photos of every single screen with my own phone. I photographed the receipts. I uploaded everything to a secure cloud drive that was not linked to any of our shared devices. Then put the burner phone back exactly as I found it. The next morning, I did not go to Horizon Learning Labs. I put on my most professional blazer and drove to Rivercrest Credit Union. I sat in a private glass-walled office with a young banker named Steve. I smiled, the picture of a supportive wife. "Logan is so busy with this new project." I lied effortlessly. "I just want to do a quick audit of our liquidity before things get hectic. Can we look at the mortgage and any linked lines of credit?" Steve typed for a moment, then frowned. "Well, you have the primary mortgage, and then there is the new HELOC you opened 2 weeks ago, the $35,000 draw." The room seemed to tilt. "A home equity line of credit." "Right," I said, my voice not wavering by a semitone. "The renovation fund. Can you pull up the authorization on that? I just want to check the rate." He turned the monitor. There it was, My signature. Or rather, a digital approximation of my signature that Logan must have forged while I was asleep or in the shower. And where did those funds go? I asked. It looks like a wire transfer to Pierce Holdings, LLC, Steve said. Pierce Holdings, a shell company. He was draining the equity in our home to hide cash before the divorce. Perfect, I said, standing up. Print me the full statements for the last 2 years. Steve, I want to help him manage the cash flow better. I walked out of the bank with a thick manila envelope tucked under my arm. The sun was shining in Harbor Ridge, but my world was gray. I got into my car and dialed a number I had memorized, but hoped never to use. Law offices of Mariah Holt, a receptionist answered. Hi, I said, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. This is Claire Donovan. Is Mariah in? Tell her I need to collect on that joke she made at my wedding about calling her first. Mariah Holt's office was a sanctuary of dark mahogany and legal ruthlessness, located in the center of Harbor Ridge. I sat across from her, spilling the entire contents of my last 48 hours onto her desk. I told her about the conversation under the sink, the burner phone in the golf bag, the secret HELOC, and Logan's plan to ambush my inheritance. Mariah listened without blinking. She was 52, sharp as a razor, and had been my mother's best friend. When I finished, she picked up the copy of my parents' estate papers and adjusted her glasses. Claire, listen to me closely, Mariah said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Logan is arrogant, but he is also sloppy. He assumes that check is coming to you personally. It is not. Your father set this up as the Donovan Family Trust. You are the sole trustee and beneficiary. That money does not belong to Claire Donovan, the wife. It belongs to the trust. I blinked, confused. So he cannot touch it. Not unless you let him, Mariah said, leaning forward. The moment you transfer a single cent from that trust into your joint account at Fairview, you commingle the funds. Then it becomes marital property. If you do what he expects on Monday, you are handing him the knife to slit your financial throat. A cold shiver went down my spine. He thinks I am going to transfer it. He is banking on it. Exactly. Mariah smiled, but it was not a nice smile. It was a shark's grin. So, here is what we are going to do. We are going to let him think he is winning. In the next 4 days, you are going to get him to sign a post-nuptial debt allocation agreement. We will frame it as a necessary step to boost his credit score for his big project. He takes full legal liability for the HELOC, his credit cards, and any personal loans. We sell it as cleaning up the balance sheet. He will sign that I asked. If you stroke his ego enough, Logan would sign a deal with the devil. Mariah scoffed. I will also draft an emergency protective order based on financial fraud and the forged signature. We will keep it in our back pocket for the party. But to really bury him, Claire, I need character evidence. I need to prove this is a pattern, not a mistake. I pulled out the printed screenshot of the text message from Rachel K. I found her. I said, Rachel King. She lives in Oak Haven, about 40 minutes from here. That evening, I drove to Oak Haven. It was a tired industrial town that had seen better days. I found Rachel working the bar at a dim, sticky-floored dive called the Rusty Anchor. She looked tired, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing an apron stained with beer. When I introduced myself as Logan's wife, her face hardened instantly. Get out! Rachel spat, slamming a rag onto the counter. I have nothing to say to you or your scumbag husband. He is trying to do to me what he did to you, I said quietly, refusing to move. I saw the messages. Rachel, the $25,000. Rachel froze. Her eyes darted around the bar to ensure no one was listening. Her hands were shaking slightly. He told me he was building a logistics startup, Rachel whispered, her voice cracking. He said we were going to get married. That money was my mom's life insurance policy. He took it, Claire. He took it all and then ghosted me. I had to file for bankruptcy last year. I lost my car. I almost lost my apartment. I am going to destroy him, I said, looking her dead in the eye. But I need your help. I need a sworn affidavit. I need the texts. I need proof that he is a predator. Rachel looked at me for a long time. I saw the anger warring with the shame in her eyes. Finally! She let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for years. He used to call me his little investment, Rachel said, her voice trembling with rage. I want to see him burn. He will. I promised. Write the statement. Give me the photos. And I promise you, by Sunday night, Logan Hayes will wish he had never met either of us. I returned home on Wednesday evening to find Logan slumped over the dining table, surrounded by spreadsheets and rubbing his temples theatrically. He looked up as I entered, letting out a heavy, martyred sigh designed to elicit sympathy. I am drowning here, Claire, Logan said, gesturing at the papers. The pressure from the partners is insane. If you really love me, you would help take the financial worry off my plate so I can focus on closing this deal. It was the opening I had been waiting for. I set my bag down and put on my mask of concern. I know, honey, I said softly, walking over to massage his shoulders. I have been worried too, especially with the farm inheritance coming in on Monday. I spoke to a specialist at the bank today. They said the IRS might flag the sudden influx of cash if our current debt ratio looks too messy on paper. Logan stiffened slightly. What do you mean? They suggested a temporary separation of credit liabilities. I lied smoothly, placing the document Mariah had drafted on the table. It was titled Credit Risk Separation and Asset Allocation Agreement. Basically, we assign the current debts the credit cards, the HELOC, the personal loans to your name just for the credit report. It makes my profile look pristine for the deposit. Then, once the money clears and the audit risk passes, we merge everything back. It is just a formality to keep the government off our backs. Logan pulled the document toward him. He barely read the paragraphs. His eyes glazed over the dense legal terminology Mariah had expertly woven to trap him. He saw the words asset and allocation and assumed he was taking control. I don't know, I added, putting a tremor of uncertainty in my voice. It looks so complicated. Can you explain this part to me? I want to make sure I am not doing something wrong. Logan smirked, his ego instantly inflated by my feigned ignorance. He tapped the paper with his pen. It is standard leverage strategy, babe, he said condescendingly, not realizing he was explaining his own financial funeral. You are just moving the liability column to maximize the asset intake? Trust me, I do this for a living. You are so smart, I whispered. I don't know what I would do without you. The next morning, I set the second part of the trap. Over coffee, I casually mentioned that since the floor was finished, we should host a reveal party. Why not invite Robert Keene and the partners I suggested innocently? Show them the house? Show them how stable and happy we are. It might help with the promotion. Logan's eyes lit up. That is actually a brilliant idea. Robert loves a good domestic setting. It shows character. He immediately began sending emails. While he was in the shower, I opened his laptop, went to his sent folder, and copied every single email address his boss, his colleagues, the neighbors, even his mother. I forwarded the list to Mariah. We had our audience. Friday night arrived. The house was quiet. I placed the finalized, notarized version of the agreement on the kitchen counter next to a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle, his absolute favorite bourbon. I stuck a yellow sticky note on the signature line that read, "Sign here so I can file it first thing Saturday. Love you." Logan came in, poured himself a generous glass, and picked up the pen. "This is going to be great," he said, scribbling his signature on page after page without a second glance. You know, once this money hits, I was thinking I should put the Riverpoint penthouse in my name only, just for paperwork simplicity. You don't want the hassle of the taxes. Whatever you think is best. Logan, I said, watching him sign away his defense against the $35,000 theft and the mountain of debt he had accrued. "Done," he said, slapping the folder shut. He drained his glass. "I am going to bed. Big day Sunday." I waited until I heard his snores. Then I picked up the folder. I photographed every single page, ensuring his signature was crystal clear. I uploaded the images to the secure cloud and sent a single text message to Mariah. "Done. See you at the county courthouse Sunday morning before the party." I put the phone down and sat on the floor of my new kitchen. The house was dead silent. I ran my hand over the cool, smooth vinyl plank I had installed with my own hands. It felt solid, unshakable. Unlike my marriage, this floor was built to last. I sat there in the dark, breathing steadily, waiting for the storm I was about to summon. Saturday morning broke with a gray, steel light that seemed to match the cold resolve in my chest. I spent the early hours on my knees, fitting the final few planks of vinyl flooring beneath the toe kick of the cabinets. I carefully wiped away a smear of adhesive with a rag, running my fingers over the seamless joinery. My father had taught me how to measure twice and cut once, how to respect the grain, and how to build things that lasted. It was a bitter pill to swallow that I was using the very skills he gave me to construct the stage for my husband's public execution. Once the floor was pristine, I moved on to the technical staging. I mounted 4 small, unobtrusive Bluetooth speakers in the upper corners of the kitchen, blending them into the shadows of the crown molding. I pulled out my phone and tested the connection, syncing them to a playlist I had curated titled Sunday Brunch Jazz. Buried innocuously between a Miles Davis track and a Dave Brubeck classic was a file named simply Kitchen Audio Master. Next came the visual insurance. I plugged a device that looked exactly like a standard white USB wall charger into the outlet directly facing the dining table. It was a high-definition, wide-angle camera. If Logan or his mother tried to claim later that I had doctored the audio or that I was being hysterical, I wanted their faces recorded in 4K resolution when the truth hit them. That evening, Nora Hayes arrived unannounced. She breezed through the front door carrying a tray of lasagna, her eyes immediately scanning the room. Not for me, but for her son. "Is Logan around?" she asked, setting the tray down on my new island without a coaster. I made his favorite. He needs his strength for the big week ahead. "He is at the gym," I replied, keeping my voice light. Nora nodded, her lips pursed. She ran a manicured hand over the countertop. "So, the farm money, that clears on Monday. Does it not? Logan mentioned he was anxious to get the account settled." She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the naked greed she usually masked with politeness. "He really needs to be in the city. Claire," she continued, her tone dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "A man of his talent. He is stifled here in the suburbs. He needs an environment that matches his potential. I'm sure you understand that he has outgrown this." She knew. She knew about the plan to dump me. She knew about Mia. She probably helped him pick out the penthouse. I smiled, a sharp, brittle thing. "Don't worry. Nora, everything is arranged. I am going to put that money exactly where it belongs." Nora blinked, looking slightly unsettled by my directness, but she forced a smile back. "Good. That is sensible." Late that night, while the house slept, I opened my laptop in the guest room. I logged into the Donovan Family Trust portal. With a few clicks, I scheduled a wire transfer for the entire balance, $450,000, but instead of the Fairview joint account Logan was salivating over, I routed it to a brand new, high-yield savings account at a completely different bank, solely in my name. The transfer was set to execute at 8 in the morning on Monday. Then came the emails. I opened a fresh browser window and drafted a message to the Human Resources Director at Silverline Strategies. The subject line read, "Urgent embezzlement and inappropriate conduct regarding Logan Hayes." I attached the PDF of the altered expense reports. the photos of the hotel receipts, and the text messages referencing the corporate card fraud. I hit schedule send for Sunday at 2 in the afternoon, right in the middle of our party. I did the same for a second batch of emails addressed to our guests, to be sent an hour later, ensuring that even if they left the party early, the truth would follow them home. Finally, I sent a secure link to Rachel and the two other women I had found in Logan's past, giving them the legal ammunition they needed to join the fight. Sunday morning arrived with a heavy, oppressive silence. I slipped out of the house before Logan woke up and drove to the county courthouse. Mariah was waiting for me by the side entrance, holding a folder. We stood before the on-call judge in a small, sterile office. Mariah laid out the evidence of the HELOC fraud, the forged signature, and the intent to drain marital assets. "This is not just a divorce, Your Honor," Mariah argued firmly. "This is an active financial crime in progress. My client needs immediate protection to prevent him from liquidating the home equity and disappearing." The judge reviewed the documents, his brow furrowing as he looked at the two different versions of my signature. He picked up his pen. "Granted," he said, signing the emergency protective order. "He is to be removed from the residence and barred from accessing any shared assets for 30 days pending a full hearing." I walked back to my car with the court order burning a hole in my purse. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw the kitchen lights on. Through the window, I could see the table set with white linens, the wine glasses sparkling in the sun. For a split second, my resolve faltered. I wondered if this was too cruel. I wondered if I was becoming a monster. Then, I remembered the conversation from the audio file. I remembered Logan's voice, echoing in this very kitchen, calling me an outdated version that he needed to upgrade. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. The woman who would have forgiven him died under that sink. I opened the car door and stepped out, ready to burn it all down. By noon on Sunday, the house was full. The air in my newly renovated kitchen hummed with the polite, curated noise of suburban success. Our neighbors, Susan and Mark, were admiring the herringbone pattern of the vinyl planks near the fridge. A handful of my friends from Horizon stood near the patio doors, sipping mimosas. And then there were the sharks. Robert Keene, the CEO of Silverline Strategies, stood by the island with his wife, looking bored but expensive. Logan was in his element. He moved through the crowd like a politician, dragging me along by my waist. His grip was tight, his fingers digging into my ribs not out of affection, but possession. He was using me as a prop, a breathing accessory to prove his stability to his boss. Claire did all of this herself. Logan boasted to Mr. Keene, gesturing grandly at the floor. "I am a lucky man. Robert, most wives just shop, but mine, she builds. It is good to have a woman who knows the value of hard work." "Impressive," Keene noted, though his eyes barely left his scotch. Then Nora Hayes decided to make her presence felt. My mother-in-law stood in the center of the room, holding a glass of Chardonnay, and raised her voice just enough to cut through the chatter. "Well, enjoy it while you can," Nora declared, offering a tight smile to the room. "When Logan moves us uptown to the city next month, this house is going to fetch a marvelous price. The market is peaking. You know." The room faltered. A few of my friends exchanged confused glances. I had just spent a week on my knees installing this floor, and now his mother was publicly announcing its sale. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, but I kept my face smooth as marble. "We are keeping our options open, Mom," Logan said quickly, smoothing over the awkwardness with a charming laugh. He tapped a spoon against his glass. "Speaking of options and futures, I would like to say a few words." The room quieted. Logan pulled me tighter against his side. I could smell the bourbon on his breath, mixing with that expensive cologne. When Claire and I started, Logan began, looking deeply into my eyes with a counterfeit sincerity that made my stomach turn. We were living in a shoebox apartment, but we had a vision. Claire has always been my rock. She trusts me implicitly to steer our ship. And with this new project at Silverline, and a significant financial milestone hitting our accounts tomorrow, we are about to turn the page to a new chapter. To Claire, for always believing in me. To Claire, the guests echoed. Logan leaned down to kiss me, whispering against my ear. Play along. Don't ruin this. I pulled back gently. I reached into my pocket and withdrew the small black remote. I picked up the microphone from the karaoke machine we had set up for later. Thank you, Logan, I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. It sounded like it belonged to someone else. You are right. I have always trusted you, but before we drink to the future, I think we should appreciate the past. Specifically, last Monday, right here in this kitchen. Logan frowned, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. Claire. What are you? I found a recording I think everyone needs to hear. I interrupted. I pressed the button. The Bluetooth speakers in the ceiling crackled to life. The jazz music cut out instantly, replaced by the hollow, echoing sound of a room under construction. Are you sure the voice of a young woman filled the kitchen, loud and crystal clear? Won't she, come back? The silence in the room was absolute. It was a vacuum. A glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered on the floor. But no one looked down. Relax, Mia. Logan's voice boomed from the speakers, dripping with arrogance. Claire is buried in meetings. She is a creature of absolute habit. I watched the blood drain from Logan's face. He looked up at the ceiling speakers, then back at me, his eyes wide with shock. Have you given her the papers yet? The woman's voice asked. I wait for the deposit. The recording of Logan replied, $450,000. The final disbursement from the Mitchell farm sale. It hits the Fairview joint account on Monday. I take 50%. Then I kick her out. The recording ended with the sound of cruel laughter. The room remained frozen for one heartbeat, then two. Susan clapped a hand over her mouth. Robert Keene lowered his glass, looking at Logan as if he were a cockroach on a dinner plate. Nora Hayes had turned the color of ash. Logan stood paralyzed. His mouth opened and closed like a fish on dry land. Then, the panic hit him. Turn it off, Logan screamed, lunging toward me, but stopping short when he saw the look in my eyes. He spun around to face his boss and the guests, forcing a twisted, frantic smile. That is a deep fake. It is AI. Someone is jealous of my success and trying to sabotage me. It is not real. A deep fake, I repeated, my voice flat. Yes, Logan shouted, pointing a shaking finger at the speakers. It is fake audio, Claire. Turn it off. Do not believe this garbage. I shrugged, turning my body slightly to face the large flat-screen television mounted on the wall. Well, I said, pointing the remote at the screen. If you think the audio is a fake, Logan, perhaps you will enjoy the visual component of this little presentation. The 60-inch television screen above the fireplace flickered to life, casting a harsh, blue glow over the stunned faces of our guests. There was no sound this time, just a slideshow of high-resolution screenshots. They appeared one after another, timed perfectly to let the words sink in. A text thread between Elle and Mia C. appeared. I booked the suite at the Omni for Tuesday. Logan's text read, "Tell me you brought that black dress." I did. Mia's reply popped up. Are we celebrating? We are celebrating the fact that the old retirement plan is finally about to pay out, Logan wrote back. Just waiting for the farm money to hit the Fairview joint account. Then I am free. The timestamp on the message was from last Tuesday at 10 in the morning, exactly when Logan had told me he was in a critical strategy meeting. For those of you who are confused, I said, my voice cutting through the heavy silence of the room. These messages are from a burner phone Logan keeps hidden inside the lining of his golf bag. And if you look closely at the next slide, you will see receipts. I clicked the remote. An image of a hotel invoice appeared, followed by a receipt for a diamond tennis bracelet. That bracelet was billed to the Silverline Strategies corporate card as client retention expenses. I explained calmly. Robert Keene's face went rigid. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. He stared at the screen for a moment, his thumb scrolling rapidly. "I just received an email, Mr. Keene announced, his voice dangerously low. He did not look at Logan, he looked at the floor. "It is a very detailed file containing cross-references of company credit card charges against personal travel and jewelry purchases. If this data is accurate, we are looking at significant embezzlement." Logan spun around, his face slick with sweat. He looked trapped, a cornered animal realizing the walls were made of glass. He turned on me, baring his teeth. "You hacked my phone," Logan screamed, pointing a trembling finger at me. "This is illegal. You violated my privacy." "I am under immense pressure." "Claire, I made mistakes because of the stress of carrying this family. You have no right to air our dirty laundry like this. Please," he begged the room, spreading his hands wide. "You have to understand. I am a man trying to survive in a cutthroat industry. I made a mistake. Just one mistake." For a split second, I was not in the kitchen. I was back in the sterile hallway of the county courthouse that morning, sitting on a wooden bench next to Mariah. I remembered the cold pen in my hand as I signed the affidavit she had prepared. Any data retrieved from shared property or used in the commission of marital fraud is admissible, she had said. He forfeited his privacy when he used family assets to fund his affair. I blinked, returning to the present. The kitchen smelled of fear and expensive cologne. "If you want to talk about violations." "Logan," I said, my voice barely rising above a conversational volume, "perhaps the judge will be more interested in the home equity line of credit you opened 2 weeks ago." Logan froze. $35,000. I continued, staring him down. "You forged my digital signature to strip the equity out of this house. You stole from us to hide cash in a shell company before you filed for divorce. That is not stress. Logan, that is grand larceny. You are lying," he spat. I pressed the button on the remote one last time. The screen shifted to video footage. It was grainy, shot from a low angle in our garage just last Friday. It showed Logan standing next to his golf bag, holding the cheap plastic burner phone to his ear. "Just a few more days. Baby," the video Logan said, checking his watch. "Just keep your head down. Once the check clears on Monday, I pull the trigger. Claire won't even see it coming. Just pretend for a little longer." "Stop it!" Nora shrieked. She lunged forward, her face twisted in a mask of panic and denial. "Turn it off right now. This is a private family matter. You are ruining him." I looked at my mother-in-law. For years, her criticism had made me feel small. Now, she looked microscopic. Family, I asked cold. "Nora, you knew. You knew he was planning to take my inheritance and leave me with nothing. You made jokes about it. You enabled him. When you decided to let your son rob me blind, you revoked your membership in my family." Nora opened her mouth to scream again, but the sound was cut off by the chime of the front doorbell. Ding dong. The sound was cheerful, absurdly normal against the backdrop of the carnage in the kitchen. Every head turned toward the hallway. Through the glass panels of the front door, the shapes were unmistakable. 2 uniformed police officers stood on the porch, and, standing between them, looking like the angel of death in a tailored suit, was Mariah. Logan looked at the door, then back at me. His face went from red to a terrifying shade of gray. He realized, finally, that the stupid wife he had underestimated had not just caught him, I had buried him. Mariah Holt stepped through the doorway, her presence commanding the room like a gavel strike. She walked past the stunned guests and stood next to the police officers, holding a crisp document in her hand. "I am Mariah Holt," she announced, her voice projecting clearly to the back of the kitchen. "I am representing Mrs. Donovan." This is a copy of an emergency protective order signed by Judge Holloway this morning. Mr. Hayes, you are hereby barred from this residence and from accessing any joint financial assets pending a full investigation into fraud and forgery. Logan stared at the paper as if it were written in an alien language. His face crumpled, shifting from arrogance to sheer desperation in a heartbeat. This is a joke. A sick joke. Logan shouted, his voice cracking. I live here. My name is on the deed. You cannot just kick me out of my own house. One of the officers stepped forward, his hand resting casually near his belt. The order is effective immediately. Sir, you have exactly 30 minutes to gather essential personal items. After that, you must vacate the premises. Before Logan could scream again, Robert Keene cleared his throat. The sound was dry and final. You should probably pack your office too. Logan, Mr. Keene said, his tone freezing the room. Consider your position at Silverline suspended effective immediately. We will be conducting a full internal audit regarding the credit card misuse and expense fabrication. If the authorities need our files, we will cooperate fully. Logan looked at his boss, his mouth opening and closing silently. The walls were closing in, and I decided to seal the room. I picked up the folder Logan had signed so casually the night before and held it up. And just so we are clear on the math, I said, looking him dead in the eye, this is the debt allocation agreement you signed on Friday. In it, you voluntarily assumed full legal responsibility for the HELOC, the personal loans, and all credit card balances. You released me from those obligations in exchange for, well, for nothing. Mariah smiled. And it was the sharpest thing in the room. And since the inheritance is held in the Donovan Family Trust, it never touched a joint account. It is separate property. The court will almost certainly uphold that. So, the money is hers. The debt, however, is entirely yours. Logan spun toward his mother, sweat dripping down his pale face. Mom, tell them she promised to share everything you heard her. Nora looked at her son, then at the police, and finally at the disgusted face of Mr. Keene. She saw her social standing evaporating. She took a step back, clutching her purse. I don't know what you are talking about. Logan, Nora stammered, looking away. I had no idea you were in this kind of trouble. I cannot be involved in this. For the first time, Logan looked truly alone. I stepped closer to him. I thought I was your partner, I said, my voice steady and cold. But to you, I was just a sponsor with zero equity. Today, I am pulling my funding. You wanted to restart your life. Go ahead, but you are starting from the bottom, exactly where you belong. I will get half the house, Logan spat, veins bulging in his neck as he realized he had lost. I will bleed you dry in court. You will owe me. Mariah shook her head, pulling another document from her briefcase. We have already drafted the petition for divorce. We will force the sale of the home. Your share of the equity will go directly to paying off the debts you just admitted to owning in this contract. By the time the dust settles, you will be lucky to break even. Actually, knowing your spending habits, you will probably be starting from a negative number. The officer put a heavy hand on Logan's shoulder. Let's go, sir. I pointed to the stairs. I packed a bag for you. It is by the door. Do not come back. Logan grabbed the bag, looking small and defeated, and was marched out the back door under the silent, judging gaze of everyone he had tried to impress. Nora scurried after him without a backward glance. Mr. Keene gave me a single, solemn nod of respect and walked out. The guests filtered out quickly after that, leaving me in silence. The front door clicked shut. The only sound left was the gentle patter of rain beginning to fall on the roof. I looked down at my feet. The new vinyl floor was solid. It did not squeak. It did not buckle. I took a deep breath, the first real breath I had taken in 6 days. Logan was gone, and I was still standing, right here on the foundation I had built with my own 2 hands. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please leave a comment letting me know where you are tuning in from. I would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like the video, and hit the hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.